Joining us now is Senator McCain, who has spent the better part of his 4th of July weekend visiting places that none of us would ever voluntarily show up at, I would think, although doing great work out there. And I'd like to welcome you back to the show, Senator. Hello.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and thanks for having me on. And again, as you said, I was in Kandahar on Kabul on the 4th of July. General Petraeus had just taken command that morning and was privileged to spend time with the troops, re-enlistment ceremonies and award ceremonies. And, I'm humbled to be in their presence, and I'm amazed at their morale and their dedication. And by the way, I got a ride in Baghdad, and guess what? The Arizona National Guard helicopter. It was really a treat to see those guys. They've been over there almost a year, and they're coming home soon.
Outstanding, and we can't wait to have them back at home safe. I heard some of the comments you made over the weekend, and kind of the headline that stuck out was you made the proclamation that Kandahar was really the linchpin, if you will, to all of Afghanistan. Do you want to expound a little on those comments?
And history shows that Kandahar is the key to control of Afghanistan. It is in the hands of the Taliban, and they're just beginning an operation to try to get them out. We went to checkpoints outside Kandahar and in Kandahar, where the U.S. has set up these checkpoints to try to check the flow in and out, and they're setting up police stations inside Kandahar, and it's dangerous work. Casualties are going to go up, I'm sorry to say, but I believe the strategy can succeed. By the way, we went to one of these checkpoints. A couple of things interesting. One, the temperature was easily 120 degrees, and here's our soldiers in full body armor out there, just incredible work they're doing with the Afghan police, and they do have some of the police who are brand new, who are not as corrupt as the older police were. Mm-hmm. So they're going to try, and I think they will succeed. But my biggest problem, and we need to talk a lot about this, Bruce, is that the president, without any military recommendation, as you know, last year said that we would be leaving in the middle of 2011.
Correct.
That has had a very serious and bad impact on our allies and our enemies in the region. We talked to a police chief there in Kandahar, and he said, the Taliban are telling everybody, don't worry, the McCains are leaving. The Americans, the Americans are leaving, and we're going to cut off your heads when they do.
Right, and that's a heck of a motivation, if you will, for the local tribes people that they know there's a day on a calendar. They know that.
Right. So you set a date for withdrawal before you succeed. After you succeed, set a date for withdrawal. We did that in Iraq, but set a date afterwards, not before, and then you're not. And it is unsettled the Pakistanis, who are now the ISI, is working more closely with the Taliban. I mean, there's all kinds of reverberations when the most powerful nation in the world says that they are leaving. Well, we succeeded in Iraq. We are going down to 50,000 troops by the end of August, and we will be drawing down further than that. There have been 11 combat deaths this year in Iraq, and that's because we succeeded and then said we're leaving. So it's very discouraging to me.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you on the idea that setting the timeline is bad. But I wanted to go back because you had mentioned some of the corruption in the police, and I think there was some disturbing news last week that came out. I didn't have a chance to ask you about it yet. That possibly President Karzai, our ally, if you will, in Afghanistan, has been negotiating with the Taliban also because he's looking out for his own neck. What does Afghanistan look like after the Americans are gone? I mean, again, you and I have had our disagreements, if you will, on Afghanistan and on the policy. I continue to be very concerned that we don't have anybody in Afghanistan that's on our side.
Well, you have every reason for that concern. I would point out in Iraq we had corruption, we had sectarian violence, we had entire ministries that were running death squads out of it, and there was huge violence. There is a serious problem with corruption in Afghanistan, and that's what breeds insurgencies. You know, when you have good government, you don't have insurgencies. Yeah. So your point is well made. One of the biggest problems, and I got to give you straight talk, is Walid Karzai, who is the brother of President Karzai, who is, guess where, located in Kandahar.
Yeah.
And so we have got to reduce and eliminate over time this corruption issue, and that's why I'm waiting. Frankly, in December there's going to be an assessment of the whole situation. I'm very worried about the date for withdrawal, and I'm very worried about corruption.
Yes, sir.
But I also believe that with David Petraeus, with the people that we've got there, and there are some problems, by the way, to the embassy. I don't want to get into the weeds with you, but that we can succeed, but it's not going to be easy, and we have to have the president at least say that the date for withdrawal is based on conditions, and start reducing this corruption. Otherwise, we will not succeed. So your concerns and skepticism, to some degree, is certainly justified.
Fair enough. Now you are in Israel right now. You've hopped aboard the flight and gone to Israel. It seems to be a pretty interesting, I think I'm being polite, sensitive time in U.S.-Israel relations. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be coming to Washington soon to meet with the president. Vice President Joe Biden is there in Israel right now, going to be meeting with them. How do you see our relationship moving forward with Israel?
Well, if you had asked me to design a way to really harm our relations with Israel, the beginning of the Obama administration, I couldn't have figured out a better way to do it. Demanding a freeze on the settlements that are within Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's not negotiable. The fact is that, and then, of course, the Palestinians demanded it. Then we said, when we dropped our demand for it, but the Palestinians didn't. There is significant problems now, as you know, in southern Lebanon, that the Syrians have moved, published reports. Syrians have moved Scud missiles in. The Iranians just gave the Syrians sophisticated radar. The Iranians are on their way to development of nuclear weapons, as we all know. Despite the sanctions, they're not going to be deterred from their path to nuclear weapons. There is all that bad news on the good side. In the West Bank, the Abbas and Fayyad, the prime minister who I just met with, they have been making some progress in that direction. But still, I mean, there are enormous issues out here, and the volatility of this part of the world is, some people, as you know, Bruce, some people say that the Israelis may feel that they are forced to attack Iran before they have a full nuclear capability. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know what happens when the Iranians acquire nuclear weapons, and the first thing is the entire region becomes nuclear, and that's not good, to say the least, in the most unstable part of the world.
No, we are in lockstep on that, sir. I assure you of that. I wanted to bring it back home as we wrap up here, and there have been some comments made recently. Obviously, the president gave really his first real address on immigration, on the border. Certainly made some comments. The border's more secure, safer today than it ever has been. Talked about paths to citizenship again. We started to hear some of the comments that, if I can be frank, the President Obama's speech last week, if it sounded like it could have been scripted for President Bush, it could have been President Clinton could have given that speech. Heck, we could go back to Carter probably could have given that speech. It didn't sound any different from any of the others, yet, as you know, the situation on the ground here is very real and continues to get worse.
Well, Bruce, what that speech may have been given by Clinton or by Bush, and it may have had some validity several years ago, okay? But it doesn't now, because the violence on the other side of the border has escalated to a degree that there is a threat an existential threat to the government of Mexico. 23,000 Mexican citizens have been killed in the last 3 years. 21 murdered 12 miles south of Nogales, Arizona. What the president seems to be oblivious to, and what I have been observing and warning about and talking about and saying for the last 3 years that we have to get the border secured first, is because I have closely observed, including trip to Mexico City, closely observed this escalating violence on the other side of the border, which is spilled over to our side of the border. And look, it used to be some years ago that there was problems with human smuggling and drug smuggling. But did you ever believe 3 years ago that our government would put up signs warning people that they're in the southern part of our state, warning people they're in a drug smuggling and human smuggling area?
Exactly.
Did you ever think that Arizona, Phoenix, would be the number 2 kidnapping capital of the world? So the dynamics have changed dramatically in the last 3 to 4 years, and they have changed to the point where we must secure our border first. And we need, by the way, a legal temporary worker program in the agricultural sector down in Yuma. Okay? But all of that comes after we get the border secure. I'm in Israel. Okay? Israel has secured their borders.
Yes, they have.
You can do it with surveillance, you can do it with fences, and you can do it with personnel. And we don't have enough of all three. But we can, John Kyle and I, have a 10-point plan that can secure the borders. And so I invite the President of the United States, and John and I will be sending a letter, to come to the border and see it.
Right.
And see and get a little idea of these statistics. I mean, the horrific things that you talk about every single day that's going on in Mexico, the killings, the beheadings, they're horrible beyond description. Then, one, we have to get our border secured. We have to try to help the government of Mexico combat these drug cartels, and that's just the facts. And I hope the president would come. In fact, I would invite him during the month of August. It'd be a nice time to visit the border. Well,
and it's interesting as you are in the Middle East right now. You just spent time in Iraq. You just spent time in Afghanistan, and not to belittle the work that our troops are doing there by any stretch of the imagination, but the violence coming out of Mexico at least rivals the violence that you are seeing in the Middle East, yet it doesn't seem to garner the same level of concern.
Yeah, and again, to say that the border is more secure, I understand that we have more people and more capabilities, but it has not kept up with the escalation on the other side of the border. Right. That's why we need 3,000 guards to the Arizona border immediately. And by the way, I'm very proud of the work that the governor has been doing and the way she's been speaking up to power. And so, look, it's one thing that's heartening to me is that the American people agree with us. Second of all, I know we're running out of time, but
yes,
I just got the news that the Justice Department was going to sue on what grounds?
Yeah. That
the state of Arizona doesn't have the constitutional authority to act to combat illegal immigration. Well, my God, wouldn't it be nice if the President of the United States and the federal government would fulfill its responsibilities of securing the borders so that the state of Arizona wouldn't have to do that?
Yeah. When do we get to sue the feds?
Crazy.
When do we get to sue the feds? I wanted to underhand one to you. One last question, only because, and I think you have a decent relationship with Vice President Biden. He seems to be the kind of guy that, politics aside, he's an interesting guy to say the least. I don't know if you caught these comments that he made where he said that Iraq could be one of Obama's greatest achievements of his presidency. Did you catch that comment? And I thought that was not covered as a Biden gaffe, but boy, it should be, because if I remember correctly, President Obama was not exactly the greatest supporter of the strategy in Iraq.
You just can't make it up. Vice President Biden wanted to divide Iraq into 3 different countries. He said that the surge wouldn't succeed. President Obama basically attacked General Petraeus when it was then Senator Biden, when he came in the fall of September of 2007 talking about the surge strategy, and at the same time, now Secretary of State Clinton said it would, quote, be a willing suspension of disbelief to think that the surge would work. All three were dead wrong. Now they're taking credit for it. You can't make that up. And by the way, if I could make a self-serving comment,
yes, sir.
You might remember that I said the surge could and would succeed.
Yes, sir.
And I was willing to risk my political campaign in my support for it.
Yep. That you were. Certainly you stood behind that and were very unequivocal in your support of it.
I think our discussion about Afghanistan is something that the people of Arizona need to listen to.
Yeah.
Because we have young people out there who are risking and giving their lives as we speak. And I know that jobs are important, and I know a lot of these other issues are very important. But you and I need to continue this discussion about Afghanistan. And I thank you for your thoughtful engagement in it.
Well, I appreciate the discussion, and like you, I share a deep concern that our country doesn't focus on this, and that as Americans back home here, we don't have to sacrifice anything. It doesn't affect our lives at all, and military families and the military themselves are sacrificing every day, and it's a concern of mine, and I'm not going to let it disappear. I promise you that, sir.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
You have a safe trip home. Senator John McCain, live from Israel, right here on News Talk 92.3 KTAR.